Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Tinnitist TV. Today I am talking to ZZ Ward. She's just been liberated, and it's high time. After years of being fenced in by major label record companies, this singer-songwriter is finally calling her own shots and making some of the best music of her career. That would be her fittingly titled new album, Liberation, which finds her returning to her first love, the blues, with a blistering set of tracks that balance old school juke-joint classics with her own originals about motherhood, marriage, love, and lust. And if all that weren't enough, the LP was released by the legendary Sun Records, making her a label mate of Howlin Wolf, Jerry Lee Lewis, and some guy named Elvis. From her California home, Ward zoomed in to discuss liberation, growing up in the blues, where she goes from here, and plenty more. Enjoy. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. I've been writing about you since your first album came out, 13 long, long years ago. So it's nice to finally speak to you.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's nice to meet you too.
Indeed. Um, this new one, Liberation, fourth album, kind of a little bit ahead of schedule for you. You've been on an every 5 or 6 years kind of thing for a while now. What's got you all fired up to make an album again this quickly?
Freedom. I can do whatever
That
I
would be
want.
inherent in the title. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have to run it by so many people now. I just can make whatever I want and put it out. So I I think that has a lot to do with it.
Okay, so this is the schedule you would have been on if you could have been all this time, maybe?
I'd say so.
All right, fair enough. For folks who haven't heard it, obviously a blues album. Blues has always been a huge part of your sound, right from day one. But I think it's fair to say that this is kind of the deepest dive into the blues that you've taken, the most pure kind of blues record you've made in a way. What led to that? Why now? What sort of stars had to align, or what made this the right time to make this album like this?
Yeah, I've been wanting to go deeper into the blues for a long time. And when I made Liberation, it was the first time in 10 years that I was an independent artist.
Hmm.
I knew that um, I knew that I wanted to make the album, and I felt really, really excited and inspired to do it. So I got together with Ryan Spraker, and I grabbed a coffee with Ryan, and and no, we had lunch, and I told the idea of friends like these, and he has a lot of experience and a lot of love for older music and older blues and soul music. Plays great guitar, and I felt like he'd be the right choice. And so we just, had a synergy together, and we're super excited and went in on it.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you first decided, okay, this is the album I'm going to make, obviously I'm guessing you had something in your head, you heard something, the way it wanted to sound. When you were talking with Ryan, what kind of discussions did you have about things in terms of, this is the album I want to make versus this is the album I don't want to make?
Yeah, I wanted to make a blues album. I know that. And I wanted to
Sure.
keep it blues and I wanted to keep it soul. I think creating a blues album is tricky because, blues or what we think of blues is sometimes it could be a little bit of a box as far as what you can
Right.
create within that box. It still feels like, the, the genre. It has to be really, you have to be really thoughtful about, you don't have to, but I wanted to be very thoughtful about paying homage to a genre that I love while also keeping it authentic and true to my writing style, which is really incorporating, my whole heart and my life into what I'm writing, my real life experiences into what I'm writing, and kind of merging those two worlds together was the grand idea for the project, and
Okay.
having a sound, creating a sonic environment for somebody that feels really special.
Well, and I think this does create a special sonic environment. You really, it's distinctive, and I hear what you're saying because it's very authentic sounding, it's very traditional sounding in one sense, but then in the other sense, it's very unique and very distinctive and dynamic, which is a hard line to walk. Um, how did you walk that? I mean, because this sounds like again, it's walking this fence between, yeah, it's guitars and horns and very traditional structures and very traditional instrumentation, but at the same time, it doesn't sound like a throwback. It sounds very, very much of the moment, you know? How did you achieve that in a studio setting? What was the sort of, technical aspects of getting that sound?
Yeah, it was, I think just being really, really methodical about like the instruments we wanted to use and also the way that those instruments were recorded. You can do a blues album that sounds really, really clean.
Yeah,
Or you could do a blues album that sounds really, really dirty, or you're pushing the guitar, as much as you can push the volume through an amp to get it to be right on the edge of breaking apart. It just depends
right.
what you're really going for. And
And
so
that's what's obviously what you were going for with this because it's got all that noise and that grit and the reverb and all those old sort of organic elements, right?
yeah, you can do stuff like that, or you could maybe do like a Michael Bublé project where it's super clean, but I get what you're saying, but it
Yeah.
sounds like the type of music sounds old, but it's like a super
Mm,
clean recording. There's so
right.
many different ways to approach it. So when you ask me like what that balance was of like making it sound like a classic record, but still kind of making it sound modern, I think that what makes it sound modern and what makes it sound unique is who I am and what I bring to the project. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Because for me, like, um, it has to excite me what I'm writing about. I'm not going to sacrifice my edge and what I want to write about for making something sound, putting it in a tight little box with a bow on it. It's
Right.
exciting
Sure.
for me when it has a bunch of different dynamics. When it has a sound like it sounds like a throwback record, but it feels like it takes place in 2025. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
because of the experiences that I'm writing about. And yeah, it was just a constant,
Yeah.
trying to
Did it
think
did,
about those things.
did it extend to, I mean, were you using like old amps and old microphones and old gear? Was it that kind of a purist sort of situation?
Yeah, and Ryan can attest to, he's a really amazing gearhead and really
Hmm.
wanted it to sound like that, as did I, to not make it sound modern and too polished. Yeah, it's live drums on the album, and we used a lot of old microphones. It depends what song it was. I think
Sure.
Ryan was very tasteful. Like if we were recording a vocal on one song, he might think, how the vocal pertains to the instrumentation might need a microphone that's a little bit more clear versus maybe there's another song where there's not as much instrumentation, there's a little bit more room. We want to use an older microphone to kind of fill it out more. So those were all
Right.
things that we thought about when we were making it. But yes, we use generally, we were trying to approach things how they would have approached things when they were recording, some of my favorite blues artists. Yeah.
Right, right. And I want to talk a little about some of those, but first let's go back to you talking about it, this reflecting you and your situation. I mean, a lot of the songs here that you've written are about motherhood and becoming a parent and growing up and your current situation. And there aren't a lot of blues albums about motherhood.
No. No, they're not. And I think that's, I think it's interesting because the blues artists that I grew up listening to, what I really took from them was a lesson. And that lesson is be authentic to your word.
Hmm.
Now, the things that they were singing about is different than my experience stories, but the way that they express those stories, you know? And so that's what I wanted to do. I want to be authentic to my word of what's going on in my life and be authentic to my story. that's the greatest homage that I could pay to those artists, you know?
Was it obvious to you from the get-go, like as soon as you started sitting down to write for this album, or when you were just last sitting down to write, that these were the songs that were just going to come out, or was it something you kind of had to work towards and kind of realize, you know what? No, I should be really diving straight into this and diving deep into these subjects and these topics.
It just kinda yeah, it's interesting you would ask that. It just kinda happened naturally, I think. I don't think that I was, like, set out to be like, "Alright, I'm gonna write an album about, my experiences, becoming a new mom and, and how that, affects my relationships and the love in my life," and,
Right,
I just you just start kind of like, chipping away at something, and then you just kinda start seeing what it is, right?
right.
When you're creating something. I think it was more of that way for me.
And you didn't like, did you second guess it at any point in terms of, geez, maybe these
Yes.
songs are a little too personal, or maybe I shouldn't, maybe they won't
Yeah.
work, or, oh yeah,
Yeah.
is that typical for you, or are you kind of
Yeah, I did.
okay.
I no, I definitely second guessed it. And I was kind of like, I remember asking Ryan, what do you think about me saying this kind of stuff? Do you feel, and I think he was just very supportive. He was like, yeah, it has to be your story,
Hmm.
and it's not going to be authentic if it's not your story. So because also, I'm writing some of these songs with somebody who's going through a completely different situation in their life,
Right.
so it's really about choosing the people that are really, can help make you great around you.
Well, and also people who are, I'm sure part of the reason, a big part of the reason you worked with him is because he was easy to work with, right? You could have the most talented guy in the room, but if he's a pain in the ass, it's not going to work, right?
I think I try to work with people that are reasonable. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I think
yeah,
that especially when you're in music and you are passionate, I think there's gonna be debates.
oh sure,
There's going to be debates, there's going to be things that you question and they question and disagreements. I think you just have to be reasonable though, and it's kind of a give and take, You have to
yeah,
be like, "All right, I don't understand why you wanna do it this way, but I'm gonna do it that way. I'm
yeah,
gonna give it a shot. Maybe you'll be right. If you're not right, we can come in and record it again the next day."
right,
So because you can work with people that are easy to work with and they're too passive and they'll just accept anything. It's really
right.
about finding those people that are like very talented and on the same, train of thought that you are, but
Mhm.
reasonable, I think.
And did you guys have some sort of some examples of back and forths where, maybe you butted heads over an idea and you went his way and it worked, or vice versa?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Mhm.
think constantly. And I don't mean that in like a contentious way. I just
No,
mean
no, yeah.
I just mean constantly. I think,
It's like playing tennis, right? It's volleying back and forth in a sense, right?
yeah, who knows?
Mhm.
I might have done a vocal and he might have been like, "Hey, I want to do this again. I want to do it again." I don't know, and I might have been like, "I don't think we need to do it again." But if he thought we needed to do it again and had an idea of something he wanted to capture,
Hmm.
it's a disservice for me to not allow to try to do that for
Right.
something. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So, back to the song list. I mean, along with your own originals here, you've got some great covers on this. Some of them I think people will be familiar with, like My Baby Left Me, the Sun House song that it's been in your repertoire for more than a decade now, probably longer. Some Robert Johnson, but then you've got some real kind of left field ringers in here that I don't think a lot of people are going to be familiar with, like the Jester's song and the Big John Hamilton one. And that Chris Kenner one. I don't think those are necessarily on everybody's playlist. Tell me about how you found these covers and figured out which ones you wanted to do and which ones you didn't, because obviously you could have done an entire box set just of old blues songs if you wanted to.
Totally. It's tricky, you gotta figure out, I think, what people are gonna like, and also, like, what suits me as a vocalist and as an
Mhm.
artist, and what could be done, and also what the album calls for, Do we need do we have a lot of really emotional songs? Do we need more to kick it up, to kick up the pace,
Right.
Um, and yeah, there's a lot. I mean, some of these are Sun covers, and there's a lot of Sun covers that are like way more popular than these songs. But
Sure.
I don't think that's ever been like what my approach to things. My approach to things has always kind of been just being me to the full extent, and really being unforgiving with that. I think just trying making choices that might be a little out of the norm, and taking a risk with it. And I think that some of these, older covers are that. But um, I you never know what your fans are gonna like though. And so I don't never try to guess. I literally just want to make stuff that I love, and that when I
Sure.
listen to it back gets me super excited. And I love Cadillac Man, and I love I Have No One. When I heard these songs,
Yeah.
I was like, these songs are incredible. I mean, Cadillac Man is a wild song about a car
Yes.
chase. I have never heard a song like that in my life. It's incredible. And sometimes I think when people come to a show live and hear that song, like, you hear it once and you might not really be following what's going on, but you listen to that song once or twice because it's so fast. You're
Yeah.
like, wow, this is an amazing song that's really like painting a movie for me to watch. Like, yeah, there's some really incredible songs decided to put in that
Are
list.
these all ones that were familiar to you from growing up, or are these some of these newer kind of arrivals in your life?
Most of them were new, honestly.
No.
Um, some of them I had sang before, growing up in my dad's blues band, but most of them were songs I had never heard before
So where did they come
before
from? And
diving in.
was it Ryan bringing in stuff, or how did you come across them?
It was different. I mean, I remember when we started talking with Sun and stuff, and we were talking about covering some more Sun songs, like, they sent me a list of songs that were Sun songs, because
Oh, okay.
as much as you would think those are easy to find, they're not necessarily easy to find. And there's a huge back catalog. There's so much music. And it's like you look it up online, and like, I mean, you think everything's online now, right? In 2025, but it's not necessarily
It's
all
not.
online.
No.
And so they sent me a bunch of songs. I checked those songs out. Ryan sent me songs, and then Ryan and I got together and kind of discussed which ones we thought would be best for me.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the sun thing. I wore my sun shirt for you.
I saw
Um,
that.
how did that come about that you ended up on them? Because I mean, I think people mostly think of them as, a reissue, nostalgia, kind of frozen in time thing, as opposed to a current working label.
Yeah. I went in and I made Liberation independently, um, and just threw myself into that album. After I was wrapping up the album toward the end of it, I got wind that Sun Records was heard the album and they loved it.
Hmm.
And I was like, what? Sun Records? Like, exactly what everybody else thinks.
Sure.
Like, the legendary Sun Records, that's still around. Like, that's
Yeah.
like, what? And yeah, I heard so I got together with them, and learned all about them relaunching the label, and they were super passionate about the project. I was obviously a huge fan of Sun Records, and kind of grew up, being educated about Sun Records from my dad, and knowing all about the artists that were on Sun. And it just sounded really exciting to me. I think that they loved the music, and they felt like it was a great it really would contribute to the new sound that they thought represented the label. and
Mhm.
and and I really felt very honored, because those artists that were on Sun were no joke. They're the real deal. And so to even think of myself as being the new face of that is just, it's really cool to me. It's really cool to me, and I
Yeah.
know it's not like, it's not a major label or anything like that. That's not what it's about for me. I think for me, it's about the passion. It's about the love. And so I was really excited to team up with them. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's still a legacy kind of thing, it's they can't take that away from you now. You put out a record on Sun.
I
That's,
know. Yeah,
that's
it's
like
it's so cool.
yeah, it's like being on the old High Records label, or one of those just old legacy labels. So is there a version of Liberation that exists that was sort of what you made first, and then Sun came in and you added some Sun songs, and it's a new sort of version of it now.
Not really.
Okay.
Not really. I'd have to see the track listing. I know we had done some Sun covers kind of after we had kind of had everything ready for the album. So I can't think off the top of my head
Okay.
what the track listing is, but no, as far as like how the sound is of the album,
No, I was just
um
thinking more of the track listing because you had
mhm.
mentioned that Sun sent you over a list of songs. So I guess maybe I was thinking, you did the whole album, a whole version of the album, and then they heard it, and then the sort of pollination of, oh yeah, we can put some Sun songs on this, and maybe a few other songs got bounced or something, or.
Yeah, I have to look. I don't have the list in front of me. Do you have the
No
list in
worries.
front of you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the covers you're doing are Arthur Crudup's "My Baby Left Me," Big John Hamilton's "I Have No One," Cadillac Man by the Jesters, the Sun House song "Grinning" that you've been doing forever, Robert Johnson "Dust My Broom," Lowell Fulson's "Sinner's Prayer," and the Chris Kenner "Something You Got." Those are
Okay,
the
so
yeah.
something you got, sinner's prayer, grin in your face, dust my broom. Those were all done before.
Okay,
And then my baby left me, and I have no one. We're done after. So
I got you. Okay.
added. Yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, "My Baby Left Me" is if you're going to do one Sun song, that's probably the one, right?
yeah,
Uh-huh, uh-huh. So, did you do this to tape or did you do it digitally?
digitally.
Oh, okay. Because
Hmm.
that's again, I was, talking about the old schoolishness of it. It sounds almost like it could have been,
Yeah,
done to
that
tape.
was the goal.
Yes. And the thing about this one is I think this is your first album where there's I mean, never mind the musical purity of there's no real pop on it, there's no real hip hop on it. There are also no real name cameos. It's just you and all you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that it's just what makes sense for this project.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now we talked about you've been doing the Sun House song for quite a while now. What was it like growing up and singing with your dad's band? That must have been I mean, you did this from like a really, really young age, right? Like 6, 8, 10 kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I think when I sang As the Years Go Passing by Albert King when I was maybe like 13, I think was when I kind of went up and sang my first song in his blues band.
Hmm.
And so yeah, and then basically we would just play like 4-hour cover sets of blues music. And so yeah, when I was 16, I was singing Robert Johnson's Love in Vain. I mean, um, and I think that when I moved to Los Angeles and started playing around here and writing songs, I was always using parts of what I had learned in the blues. The blues was always something that I loved, but I don't think I ever felt um, free enough to completely kind of follow that.
Right.
Um, even though I grew up watching Susan Tedeschi and Etta James. Anytime they'd come through my town, I'd go watch them or Keb Mo. I always knew of
Yeah.
this blues world and stuff, and I was always kind of incorporating it in my music or playing grinning in your face, and you know always was a
Right.
part of my show. Yeah.
But I mean, was that part of just being in LA and being a new artist and trying to, get your foot in the door and was that sort of part of the rationale behind incorporating all these other elements? I'm not suggesting you had a gun to your head or anything like that, but that it would have been much harder for you to be, a blues purist and find your way into the industry in LA at that time.
I don't know if it was so much about that. I don't think I was super conscious of like you know, maybe being with a team of people that wasn't super supportive of the blues. Because I think in a lot of ways, if you look back at what I was doing, like when I did Cannonball, that's a blues song.
Oh
That's
yeah.
blue. That's
Yeah.
blues. I mean, so I don't think it was so much that. I think it was more like at the core of my being, I'm a creator, you
Mm.
know? And I think when I create, like, I'm not super thinking about, like, genres. I'm just thinking about, like, what
Right.
sounds dope and what I love, you know? But, I do think that, like, at a certain point, I think I just kind of looked at it like, it would be really cool to really go deeper into the music that I was brought up on,
Right.
because I just have this love of that kind of music, and I really have, a passion for it, that I think could be expressed more. And I think that's more where it comes from. It wasn't
Right.
like, that I was like, oh, I better not write too much of a blues song. It wasn't like
Right.
that, in the
Okay.
past. It was more like, oh, that beat is sick, throw it on. Like I'm gonna sing a blues melody over it. It was more just being creative, I think.
Yeah, I get you. And you're certainly not the only person who was doing that. I mean, lots of people, John Spencer has obviously done, some wild things with the blues. Um, is your dad still with us? Is your dad still around? Did you play the album for him?
Yeah, he is around, thank God. And I did play the album for him. And he loves it. He has his favorites. I think one of the coolest moments was probably telling my dad I was signing the Sun Records. That was really fun.
Sure.
It was so cool. I think that at the time I don't it was real it was like before I was even I think I just signed the contract,
Right.
I think I probably like made up a picture that had like Sun Label with ZZ Ward on
Mhm.
it. And I think I just showed it to him and I said, "What do you think?" I was like, "What do you think about this?" And he was like, "What is this? This is Sun Records?" And he was like, "Are you making a record with Sun?" And I was like, "Yeah, they're putting out my new album." Like, it was so fun. It was so fun
Cool.
to tell him that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would think this must feel a bit like coming full circle for you and kind of paying tribute to him in a way.
It really does feel full circle for me, and I think it's just like it's a real highlight of my life and my musical journey. I think, when one door it's a perfect example of when one door closes, another door opens.
Hmm.
Because, I was with a major label for 10 years, and when that relationship had ended, I was really like, "Oh, am I done?" You know what I mean? Like, is
Right.
do how do I keep doing this? And then I had to learn how to do it independently, and you just pick yourself up off the ground, and you're like, "I'm gonna keep going." And
Hmm.
then to then have for me, it feels like a win to then have Sun
Oh,
Records hear your album and be like, we love this as much as I do.
hmm.
We want to put it out together." That just felt like, wow. Sometimes you don't know what life is trying to show you, and you just got to buckle up.
Yeah, but
And
I think the whole thing's a win, really. I mean, you've made what I would say is the best album of your career. You've done it independently. You don't have to answer to anybody, like you say. There's no better position to be in than that, is there?
no, no, I mean, I guess so. Maybe if you're like a big pop artist who's just
Well,
like
sure, but if you're Taylor
touring the
Swift, yeah.
world, yeah, I don't know. But it just depends, what you're in it for. And at this point, for me,
Hmm.
like I said, um, thank you so much for saying that, by the way. I think that
Oh,
it's
my
a
pleasure.
it's a passion project for me. So as an artist to hear that, and that's what
Hmm.
I feel like too. I do feel like it's the best work that I've done in my career. That feels awesome.
Hmm.
Because I mean, even as like an athlete, you're always trying to like outdo yourself or do something better. And so yeah, it feels good.
Yeah. So what does the rest of your 2025 look like? Is it just going to be playing this on the road as much as possible, or what?
It's a combination. I think it's putting out this album. It's you know, kind of bringing my fans along with me on this next chapter, which I think they're excited about. But my live show has I'm always evolving things, and I think my live show has evolved into something a little different than it has been in the past, in a very good way. There's a lot less. There's no synths on the synthesizers on this album. So
Right.
we don't need a lot going on up there on stage. It's
Right.
like when you would go to a show, an old blues show. You have four instruments up there and making a hell of a sound. And so I think I've stripped my live show back in a way to expand it and to make it a completely different experience for the fan coming to the show. So there's going to be, more tour dates on the books, and I'm ready to go back in and make more music. And I have a lot of stuff I want to write about. So
Okay.
I'm fired up. There's a lot more to come.
Good, because I was going to ask if you sort of see this as, you mentioned a new chapter, but one that's going to continue in terms of kind of going down this road a little farther with this sound and this approach.
Yeah, it is. I feel like this is where I'm meant to be.
Hmm.
And I really feel that it maybe took me a minute to get to this musical place, but I'm really happy with it. I think that it's where I started, and now I found my way back to it, and I don't see
Exactly.
myself changing or straying from it for a long time.
It's like that T.S. Eliot quote about going back home and seeing the place for the first time?
It's exactly what it feels like. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I love about one of the many things I love about the album, that Chris Kenner, the Something You Got, that Southern soul. If I had one request, I would go, you could make an entire album of that, that Brooke Benton, all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So Something You Got is actually a song that I grew up singing in my
Oh.
dad's blues band. And it was really funny because I think Ryan actually brought it in and was like, "Hey, I think you should do this song." And I'm like, "Wait a second. I sang this song before." And from the moment I recorded a vocal for that song, I was like, "Oh hell yes. This is perfect for me." Like it just feels like the perfect sound, you know what I mean? So
Yes.
I'm not surprised you would say that. And again, it's just like, if you really listen to the music you're making, it will tell you if you're supposed to be making it or not, because every artist sounds, has a sound that matches what they the instrument that they play or that they sing. And for me, I feel like I've really found that kind of pocket.
Oh, totally. And I guess, you could probably get a good rate on making the next album at Sun Studio proper.
There you go. There you go. Hopefully they'll give me a discount.
I would think so. I would think, hey, free, come on, why not,
There you go.
You're
Yeah.
on the label. All
Yeah.
right, listen, I think I've taken up enough of your time today, but I want to say thanks so much for the album and thanks so much for the music. And I'm still waiting to get a chance to see you live somewhere, someday, somehow. Hopefully that'll happen sooner rather than later.
I hope so. I hope so. Thank you. It was a lovely interview, and I hope you have a great day.
All right, see you
Okay.
somewhere down the road. Bye.
All right. Bye.